What if I told you you could earn more money than ever before and still be worse off financially? It sounds impossible, but for millions of people around the world, this is everyday reality. So why does it feel like the harder we work, the harder life becomes? Let's talk about the hidden economics behind rising salaries and stagnant living standards. Have you ever noticed something strange about the modern economy? Every year we hear that salaries are going up. Governments report wage growth. Companies announce higher average pay. News headlines say workers are earning more money than before. And yet, many people feel poorer. Rent keeps rising. Groceries cost more. Healthcare gets more expensive. Education becomes harder to afford. And saving money feels almost impossible. So here's the big question. If salaries are rising, why doesn't life feel easier? Why do many people feel stuck financially even when their income increases? Today, we're going to break down the real reasons behind this paradox. We'll explore inflation, housing markets, productivity, debt, and how the structure of the modern economy affects everyday life. By the end of this video, you'll understand why higher salaries don't always mean a higher standard of living. Let's start with a simple but very important concept. There are two kinds of wages: nominal wages, real wages. Nominal wages are the numbers printed on your paycheck. If your salary increases from $50,000 to $55,000 per year, your nominal wage increased by 10%. That sounds good, but real wages measure something different. Real wages tell us how much stuff your salary can actually buy. If prices rise faster than your salary, your purchasing power goes down. For example, imagine your salary increases by 5%, but during the same year, rent increases by 8%. Food prices increase by 10%. Transportation costs increase by 7%. Even though your paycheck is bigger, you can afford less. This is exactly what has been happening in many countries around the world. Salaries rise slowly, but living costs rise faster. And when that happens, people experience what economists call declining real income. One of the biggest reasons living standards stagnate is inflation. Inflation means that prices increase over time. This is normal in a growing economy. But when inflation rises faster than wages, it creates serious problems. Let's look at an example. In 1990, a typical apartment in many Western cities might cost a few $100s per month. Today, that same apartment might cost several $1,000s. Food prices have also risen dramatically. Healthcare costs have exploded. Education costs have skyrocketed. But salaries did not increase at the same speed. Over the past several decades, many workers have seen wages rise slowly while key expenses grew much faster. And inflation doesn't affect all products equally. Some goods, like electronics, actually became cheaper over time. But the things people must buy to live became much more expensive. These include housing, healthcare, education, energy, childcare. These are known as essential expenses, and they take up a larger and larger part of people's income. If we had to identify the single biggest reason people feel poorer today, it would probably be housing costs. Housing has become dramatically more expensive in many countries. In some cities, rent has doubled or even tripled over the past 2 decades. Home ownership, once considered normal for middle-class families, has become increasingly difficult. Why is housing so expensive? There are several reasons. First, many cities simply don't build enough housing. Population grows faster than construction. Second, real estate has become a global investment asset. Large investors, corporations, and funds buy properties not just to rent them out, but to store wealth. Third, interest rates and financial markets have made real estate extremely profitable for investors. All of this pushes prices upward. The result is simple. A growing portion of people's income now goes toward housing. In many cities, people spend 30 to 50% of their salary on rent alone. That leaves far less money for everything else. Another important factor is the relationship between productivity and wages. Productivity measures how much value workers produce. Over the past 50 years, worker productivity has increased dramatically thanks to technology. Computers, automation, and digital systems allow workers to produce far more than previous generations. But here's the surprising part. While productivity increased significantly, wages did not increase at the same rate. This means workers are producing more value than ever before, but they are not receiving the same proportion of that value. Instead, a larger share of economic gains goes to corporate profits, shareholders, executives, investors. In other words, the economy grew, but the benefits were not distributed evenly. Another reason salaries feel insufficient is that the structure of modern life has changed. In previous generations, many families could live comfortably on a single income. Today, that is much harder. Why? Because modern life requires paying for many services that used to be free or cheaper. For example, childcare is expensive. Higher education is often extremely costly. Healthcare insurance can consume a large portion of income. Transportation costs increase with fuel prices and infrastructure needs. Technology itself also adds expenses. Phones, internet subscriptions, streaming services, software, and digital tools are now part of daily life. Individually, these costs seem small, but together they create a constant stream of expenses. Another major factor affecting living standards is debt. Many households rely on borrowing to maintain their lifestyle. Common types of debt include student loans, credit cards, mortgages, car loans. Debt payments reduce disposable income. For example, if someone earns $4,000 per month but spends $1,500 paying off debts, their real spending power becomes much smaller. This creates a situation where people earn more money but still feel financially constrained. Debt also creates long-term financial stress and limits the ability to save or invest. Modern economies are also experiencing increasing wealth inequality. This means that wealth is concentrated among a smaller portion of the population. Over the past decades, the richest individuals and corporations accumulated enormous wealth. Meanwhile, many middle-class incomes stagnated. When wealth becomes concentrated, economic growth does not benefit everyone equally. A growing economy can coexist with stagnant living standards for large parts of the population. This is one of the key reasons why economic statistics sometimes look positive while everyday life feels more difficult. Globalization also plays a role. Companies today can operate across many countries. They can move production, hire workers internationally, and outsource jobs to regions with lower wages. This increases competition in labor markets. Workers in high-income countries sometimes face pressure on wages because companies can find cheaper labor elsewhere. At the same time, globalization benefits consumers through lower prices on certain goods, but it can also reduce bargaining power for workers in some industries. There is also a psychological factor called lifestyle inflation. When people earn more money, their expectations and lifestyle often change. For example, someone earning more might move to a larger apartment, buy a newer car, travel more, upgrade technology. These changes can absorb income increases. As a result, people may feel financially similar even after salary increases. However, this explanation alone cannot account for the entire problem. The deeper structural issues we discussed, housing costs, inequality, inflation, and productivity, play a much larger role. When we combine all these factors, the puzzle becomes clearer. Salaries are increasing, but at the same time, essential living costs rise faster. Housing absorbs a large share of income. Debt payments reduce spending power. Economic gains are unevenly distributed. Global competition affects wages, and modern lifestyles create new expenses. The result is a situation where nominal incomes grow, but real living standards change very slowly. For many people, financial stability feels increasingly difficult to achieve. Conclusion. So why do salaries rise while living standards stay the same? Because income alone does not determine quality of life. What really matters is purchasing power. If wages grow slower than the cost of living, people will feel poorer even when they earn more money. Understanding this helps explain one of the biggest economic frustrations of modern life. It also highlights an important question for the future. How can economies grow in a way that improves living standards for the majority of people? That question will shape economic policy, politics, and society in the decades ahead. Because economic growth only truly matters when it improves everyday life. And until that happens, The paradox will remain. Higher salaries, but the same financial struggle.